It's a great pleasure for me to be with Mike Ducker from Federal Express, and we're going to spend the next few moments chatting together about this wonderful and unique partnership the Salvation Army has with Federal Express. First of all, Mike, thank you for being with us.
No, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Could you perhaps tell our audience exactly what you do for Federal Express?
Well, my title is the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and I'm also the President of our international businesses all around the world.
Mike, Federal Express and the Salvation Army have enjoyed a unique partnership for some years now. Really interested to know, how did all that start?
Well, it's been a great partnership, you're absolutely right. And the way that it began really was engagement and involvement with the local Salvation Army chapter. And then in 2005, we made a large donation to disaster preparedness. I think the Salvation Army calls it Prepare. And then that was successful. And in 2006, putting our heads together, we began donating canteen type trucks. We call them disaster recovery units. They were the first ones in the world at that time. And that has continued to date. We've donated about 15 of those trucks, 10 inside the U.S., 5 outside the U.S. We have some more planned in the future, like Mumbai is a future destination, Sao Paulo, a future destination for some of those trucks. So, you know, that's a little bit of the history of what we've done with the Salvation Army. It's been terrific for us.
Why would Federal Express want to partner with the Salvation Army?
Well, other than the obvious, I think in terms of the work of the Salvation Army, which in my estimation, it's a personal opinion, it's second to none. But FedEx all around the world believe in becoming a part of the fabric and the framework of the communities in which we live and work. And it does a number of things for us. I mean, it allows our employees to get involved at the frontline levels. It allows them to have a great brand like FedEx behind their efforts to help in their local communities. And I think the way that we began our involvement with the Salvation Army played to our core strengths as a corporation. We're a great logistical enterprise. We have a great global network. And for us to respond to natural crises and disasters is a very natural thing. So I think combining those core competencies that we have with the core competency of the Salvation Army have just been a fantastic partnership.
In what particular areas has Federal Express been of most assistance to the Salvation Army?
Well, I think the first one obviously plays to our core competencies. That's disaster recovery and getting goods to the front line where they're most necessary in any sort of crisis and disaster. I think the disaster recovery units, the canteen trucks, provide that, but they also provide daily care in areas that are critical. And obviously, the transportation part of the equation is one with which FedEx approaches with great passion. And then I think there are other things that are smaller under the radar screen, perhaps. But when the Kroc Center was getting prepared to open here in Memphis, they had expressed some concern about customer service training and how they might do that. And so we provided some customer service training assistance. And as you know, our customer service areas are world-class at FedEx. So we were pleased to do it, help train some of the Army staff on how they could better approach the public. And so those are just a few of the ways.
Well, as we speak, Mike, you've just come back from a global tour. You've been to Europe, you've been to China, and yes, here you are, looking as fresh as a daisy, which is incredible.
Power of a good night's sleep and a little shower there.
There you go. I'm interested to know, in your world travels, do you come across the Salvation Army at all?
We absolutely do come across them, and I think the DRUs, or disaster recovery units. I mean, we place those in Mexico City, in Winnipeg, Canada, in London. We put them in Sydney, Australia, Puerto Rico. And in all of those places, you find that the local Army is at work, very appreciative of this extra asset that they can use to serve the public and do the most good. And I think that all over the world we run into the Army, and we experience firsthand, and our employees are given opportunities to experience firsthand the great work that the Army does. So yes, all around the world. The other thing that we are able to do is we have a number of organizations that would be involved, that we support, that would be involved in similar activities. So there's some points of intersection and collaboration that we can introduce the two organizations together, and we can step back out of the way, and they carry on from there. So that's another great thing that we do around the world. Well, our basic corporate philosophy at FedEx is people, service, profit. But our approach to philanthropy and work in our communities follows a very similar course. I mean, we want to be the employer of choice, the neighbor of choice, and we want to be the carrier of choice. So if you put those things together, you can see it very much in line with our corporate philosophy. And just to take them individually, working at FedEx with a great global brand gives you the opportunity to not only be involved in the business community, but also gives you an opportunity to be involved in the communities where you live and work. And we want to be a part of the community. We don't want to stand back and just profit from the community. These are our employees that are performing jobs for our company, but they have deep seated passion for the community where they live. And we find that the more we're engaged and involved with the community, we're able to maintain, hire the best and the brightest employees. So it helps us with recruitment, it helps us with retention. I said also the neighbor of choice. And for us, again, we're part of the communities where we live and work, and aiding the community in missions that are so critical to what the community needs are helps us with local authorities. And then finally, the carrier of choice. Obviously, we're in this business to make a profit, and so we want to be the carrier of choice for all the communities, or all the businesses that are represented in the community. So I think those things line up quite nicely and quite smartly with our overall corporate philosophy. So we use that as a philanthropic base for making decisions.
How does the Salvation Army add value to FedEx, and how do we tie in with your mission?
Well, I think first of all, these are two great global organizations. And so if you think about FedEx operating in more than 220 countries around the world, and I don't know how many the Army operates
126 as of today.
126. And so you can see there's a great overlap between the places that we serve. And one of our corporate platforms is really access. And if you provide access, we believe, to new thoughts, new ideas, to the global economy, it's a very powerful tool for businesses, communities, and individuals around the world. Well, if you think about the work that the Army does, they provide access to the kind of services and needs that people have at a very human level. So there's a great intersection. and of thought in terms of the global network, and then in terms of access that we call. And it allows people to unleash great human potential. So on both sides of the equation, I think it adds great value.
Mike, I couldn't help but hear you say the Salvation Army's branding promise a little earlier on, doing the most good. It's a promise. It's not a slogan. It's a promise that we make to our investors as well as to our clients, the people that we help on a daily basis. What is your opinion of that, and how do you see that fitting in with the overall mission that we have?
Well, in a Southern colloquialism, when you say doing the most good, we say "'nuff said." You know, at the end of the day, I think it fits so perfectly what the organization does. And I know of no other organization in the world that accomplishes more good with less than does the Salvation Army. And for us, it's just a privilege to be associated with such a fine organization that is deeply penetrated around the world.
As an individual who is so committed to the Salvation Army as an advisor of ours, what would be your advice to those watching who maybe are thinking about it or maybe haven't thought about becoming involved in an advisory board membership?
Well, I would say, first of all, doing any board work requires a personal commitment. But I think one of the things you have to assess is how much you're able to do, but also how much you're enriched by being a part of it. And from personal experience, I've been enriched remarkably by being involved with the Salvation Army. And I think you can, as a corporate leader, you have great corporate competencies. Every company has what's core to them, what they're great at. And to put that together with an organization that is as efficient and as effective as is the Salvation Army, and think about things you can do to assist each other, I think is very, very powerful in our communities. And so there's really nothing like leveraging that corporate expertise in your philanthropic efforts and getting involved. You also find many other leaders that want to do the same thing. So you create this great network, and from that network, just allow great good to be accomplished in the communities where you live and work.
And talking about corporate partners now, great example of FedEx and the Salvation Army. There must be so many other potential partnerships out there. What would be your advice to that possibility of new partnerships being forged?
Well, I think a couple of different things. One, I believe that you should find organizations that very closely align with your core competencies and the community's needs and where you live and work. As an example, I mentioned earlier, we're very involved in critical logistics, disaster type work. So another organization with whom we partner very closely is the Red Cross, and everybody's familiar with the Red Cross. Another one that maybe you're less familiar with is Heart to Heart International, and they deliver medical supplies to stricken areas all around the world, not only in times of crisis, but in times of great need for the communities. So my advice would be align your core competencies and your corporate philosophy with those of the organization that you're going to serve, and I think it's a great recipe for success. Right. Well, speaking from experience on it, I've been more personally enriched, I think, than than the organization has been from my involvement. But it allows you to get involved with an organization that shares your deeply held beliefs. You can be passionate about it, and you can know that your work makes a difference. That's what it's meant to me with the Salvation Army, is that when you see services delivered, you know that your involvement, however small it is, has made a difference in someone's life. And that's what drives me. That's what motivates me, because my part really is very small, but where the work is delivered, at least you can have a small part to play in that.
Fairly recently become a National Advisory Board member, and that is a incredible group of individuals from all walks of life.
It truly is. Truly is.
What's been your experience with that on a personal level, and also bringing in the strength of FedEx into that equation?
Well, I think there are two or three things. One, you mentioned the quality of individuals that sit on the advisory board. These are truly remarkable people. They have extraordinary life experiences, and they're deeply passionate about the work. And just to be involved, and they're so varied in terms of the businesses that they're involved in. But just being involved with them, you're sharing a passion. You're learning not only about the Army, but you're learning about the other businesses that your fellow board members are engaged in. So in terms of finding points of intersection, collaboration, it's very, very powerful what you do with these other national board members. And just those meetings, those interactions, and finding out how you can be involved with the Army at a different level has been very rewarding.
Salvation Army in Memphis has been in existence for well over 100 years. And I know you've been a resident in Memphis for a long time.
Several different times. Yeah.
Okay. Your encounter with the Salvation Army prior to the corporate partnership, can you share a little of that?
Yeah, I don't think you would find an individual in Memphis and that would be critical of the work that the Army's done. I mean, we've passed through many, many years of leadership changes that have gone on, but the work remains consistent. It remains constant. It's ecumenical in its application. It's just one of the most efficient and effective organizations for delivering care at the point of need that I've ever seen. So it's very important to the community to meet those critical needs. And so this is a fabulous day for us to dedicate a center like this. I mean, this is going to be a beacon of light as far as I'm concerned in our community, and that's very important.
Can you give me some advice here as the Salvation Army strives to get engagement from its advisory organization members? Do we do enough to educate those individuals to learn what we do? What would be your advice to us as we seek to engage?
Well, I think one can always do more. I mean, that certainly to do that. But I think, yes, there's an educational prerogative for the Army to tell the community what it's doing, why it's doing it, what issues it's addressing, and what are the outcomes in the community as a result of the involvement. You know, and there's a great humility about the Salvation Army, which is also very attractive as far as I'm personally concerned. But I do think that in that humility, the facts are the facts, and the good that the Army does has to be communicated a little bit more broadly. All of that said, I think that national board members have a great opportunity to get involved with their local Salvation Army chapter and bring sort of that national and international flavor to the local community as well. We've done that. And I serve on the national board, but I have great people working with me here, and we just share ideas, collaborate, find new ways to get engaged and involved. Not only with our core competencies, but we try to pull in others to bring their core competencies into the equation. So, yeah, I think some more could be done there, but there's a fine line between the humility and the purpose of the work versus publicizing the work. So you have to be cognizant of that.
What would be your advice to any charity who strives to engage the professional board member into being involved?
Well, the first thing I would say is define the cause. The second thing that I would do is mine the passion. And the third thing that I would do is make it easy for the corporation to be involved. Those are three things that I would do.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And
Been a
above
pleasure.
all, the commitment, the passion, and the wonderful partnership that FedEx has with the Salvation Army. And you say that you play a small part, but I know that's not true. You play a
Yes,
large
it is.
part in making this all happen. And we are very grateful on behalf of the Salvation Army for what you do.
Thank you very much. It's our honor to be involved. And we do. We know we're a small part of it, but we just thank everyone that's engaged on the front line where the real work of the Army occurs. It is truly wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.